In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to paint this watercolor basil plant. You will need these 4 colors of watercolor paint, along with a size 6 and a size 1 brush. I have all the supplies linked in my watercolor supply list. You can find the template for this outline in my Etsy shop. In another one of my videos, I show you 3 different ways that you can transfer this image to watercolor paper. So to start, we're going to get our leaf covered in water to help the paint flow. The sap green is one of my favorite greens to use because it's sort of like a middle color of green where you can darken it and lighten it. We're going to start by painting around the outsides and see how it flows so nice since we put some water down already. Now it's important to keep in mind that watercolor dries a lot lighter. So it may feel like you're putting in a lot of paint, but it's going to be substantially lighter. So I'm going to pull some of my yellow, mix it into my lighter green over here. You can make these basil leaves any color green you want. These are just some suggestions for you. Now to do some leaves that are back behind, I'm going to make them darker. Pull up some of this darker green. It's a bit more blue than I like, so I'm going to pull in some brown. And some of my sap green as well. While this leaf is still wet, I'm going to go in and add a little bit of darks. If it's not flowing quite as much as I'd like, I can bring a little bit of water in my brush, sort of spread it throughout. So just go from leaf to leaf, varying the value. After I painted it with water, I can go in with some paint and tap it on one side to let it flow throughout the leaf. So I've gone through using the same technique of using water to make my leaf wet and then going in and adding some different greens. Using a lot of sap green as the base and then using my darker greens as more of a shadow. In this leaf, I just went straight into the paint. If I want to go in and add a little extra brown, I can go in while it's still wet, maybe along the edges where a shadow might be. This is called wet on wet, when you're using wet paint on top of wet paint. And it's a great method to use in watercolors. So you can even go in and add a pretty heavy pigmented line, then go in with just a wet brush and pull along the edge to fill it. It helps to dab some of the water off so you can control the flow. It's on your brush. A great way to paint the stems. It's also wet on wet. First fill it with either a really light green or some water. We want the tips to be sort of brown. So we'll pick up some of that, tap it along the edge. If we want, we can pull in a little bit of yellow or a lighter brown. Then we can go in with some of our lighter greens to fill. Go along one edge or along the whole stem. Just have fun with it. Doesn't have to look a certain way. This is a really good for practicing and figuring out how watercolors flow and how they work. So let's go to our next stem. I can pull out my smaller brush if I feel like I'm having too much water being released, or if the line is too fine. Again, I just got it wet. Then I went in with some greens. So as this is getting bigger, it's easier to use a brush that can hold a little more liquid. So I'm going to tap some more browns at the base here while it's still wet. And it'll flow up the stem. The trick is letting watercolors kind of do their own thing, but having some control over the flow. If you feel like you have too much water on a leaf, you can dry out your brush and pull some up. You can use a dry brush that you haven't been painting with, or part of a paper towel, and you can kind of blot it. While it's still wet, I'm going to go in and add some darker greens in here. So I'm going to continue to go throughout the rest of these leaves. It helps to vary the color of green you're using, especially in leaves that are touching, so that it creates more definition in the shape. If you touch a leaf next to another leaf while they're still wet, you'll have some of it flow into each other. But you can either go back, like I happened here, you can either go back and define it after it's completely dry, or leave it. This one I'm going to just find a little bit more. While that's still wet, go in with your brown on the tip. You can vary the colors in these stems as well. Now I have my first layer down, and if I like it, then I can be done. But if I want to go back in, now that it's dried, I can see areas that maybe are a little lighter than I wanted. If I want, I can go back in, add some more darks, some more lights, try to make things pop a little bit. Just be careful not to do too much outlining, or it'll feel more stiff. So I did outline there, but then I'm going to go back in with some water to soften the edge. Same thing over here. So feel free to play around with it. Careful not to push too hard with your colors and different layers, because the more layers you build up, especially if it's not completely dry, the more muddy your colors will start to look. I'm going to darken some of the stems that are behind right here. Feel free to comment with any questions you may have, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this.